Hello and welcome back. My name is David Loya. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Arcata, and I've been involved in the city's coastal and sea level rise planning efforts for at least 16 years now. Welcome to the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Planning Part 1 video. This video is part 1 of a two-part series focusing on the timelines related to sea level rise impacts and the ramifications of different adaptation responses on the people in our community. In this video, we focus on the projected timelines for different types of impacts that may result from sea level rise. In part 2, we'll concentrate on the policy impacts. Feel free to contact me if you have comments or questions after watching this video, and please get involved in this important planning discussion. It's important to recognize that the impacts will affect us at different scales and across different sectors. The first sector that comes to mind is public safety because of future hazards associated with flooding. But policy will affect several other sectors, including business, housing, and the environment. Across these sectors, impacts scale from the individual to the social. For instance, the business sector. Policies that affect business growth have impacts on whether individuals have jobs, but they also affect the business's ability to provide services and goods to people and other businesses. These sectors are interrelated and rely on one another, such that impacts on one will have cascading effects on others. In part 2, we'll explore impacts in these sectors in more depth, but we touch on them here to put physical impacts and timelines we discuss in this video in the social context. This graphic shows sea level rise projections based on best available science the Ocean Protection Council released in 2024. The elevation in feet are shown on the left vertical axis, and the years are shown out to 2150 on the horizontal axis. The different models from low to high are shown in different colored lines, dating from the base year of 2020. You may recognize this graphic from previous sea level rise content produced by the city, but I will cover the main points again for context. The data are contained in the Ocean Protection Council's report. This graphic shows the 2018 H++ scenario. This was previously considered the worst case scenario that assumed rapid melt of glaciers. The current science rejects this model and shows that there is no evidence to support such extreme projections. The high and intermediate high projections show 5 to 6 feet of sea level rise by the turn of the century and up to 8 to 12 by 2150. The model shows that these projections are highly unlikely to occur, with less than 1% probability. These high scenarios are an upper limit of the model. These are perhaps useful when considering the highest risk facilities like siting nuclear reactors or hospitals, where you want to be absolutely certain you've accounted for the future risk environmental conditions. The low and intermediate low models are on the opposite extreme. Sea level rise is nearly certain to meet or exceed the levels projected by these models. The intermediate scenario is still relatively unlikely at a 5% probability, but the city has been using this intermediate scenario as an upper limit for adaptation planning for most uses. The intermediate projection, using the intermediate projection, the model shows sea level rise that is 6 feet higher in 2150 and 3 feet higher in 2100. So let's have a look at that, what that would look like on the ground. This is an aerial image of the south part of Arcata. You can see the open areas south of Samoa shown by the purple arrow, and the South G Street neighborhood. This area has a variety of uses: people's homes, jobs, and businesses are in the South G Street neighborhood. There are recreational uses and infrastructure that the whole community benefits from. And there are sensitive habitats and working lands. Considering the human dimension is critical in this analysis. This image shows the impact of the intermediate scenario in the South G Street neighborhood. For reference, you can see those arrows pointing to the various activities. And you can see that this is a pretty dramatic effect on the neighborhood, with businesses and homes flooded regularly. It only has less than a 5% chance of occurring in the next 125 years, according to the current model. And if we treat this high impact, low probability outcome as emergent or certain to occur, and set policy to respond accordingly, we end up with solutions like rapid retreat. We would evacuate the area in preparation for this eventuality. In particular, if we aren't thinking about the timelines that this will take. If instead we acknowledge that over the next 75 to 125 years, flooding will increase slowly over that time frame, and we can use that time to relocate uses, our policy response will be more measured. This image is the same area, and it shows the intermediate low scenario, the near certain scenario of 3 feet by 2150. This would still be a challenge for the community, clearly, but you can see that the flood protection would be needed in the southernmost part of the neighborhood, and the city would have 125 years to adjust to and manage tidal waters in this scenario. This significantly longer on-ramp to 3 feet of sea level rise, which is manageable through new infrastructure, provides the affected sectors time to plan and react to address the financial consequences and reinvest in other parts of town. Incidentally, the low projection for 2150 is the same as the intermediate for 2100. We're talking 3 feet of sea level rise by 2190 or 2100. The same principles apply to adjusting over time to the new tidal cycles in this scenario. But in this instance, we would have only 65 years to adjust. To recap, 2 feet of sea level rise is 60 to 90 years out, depending on the correct model. And 3 feet of sea level rise is somewhere between 70 and 125 years out. This means we have 60 years as the minimum, and perhaps much longer than that, to thoughtfully respond and prepare for a wetter world. And if we meet or exceed our climate goals, we could have up to 125 years to plan and prepare. Our policy decisions need to balance the risk as well as the likelihood of that risk. But policy also needs to consider impacts on the various sectors that make up our current quality of life, our livelihoods, and our communities. We need to ensure that our response to sea level rise is advancing our ability to keep people and property safe, while avoiding the unintended consequences that come from reacting too soon, especially when those unintended consequences would be borne unequally in our community. In part 2, we will consider the affected sectors in more detail, consider how different policy options might affect them, and the current proposals for how to address sea level rise long term. I hope this video was helpful, and please, again, reach out to me if you have follow-up questions about this content, and stay engaged in our coastal planning efforts. Thank you.